It's probably a sign of what type of story this will be when I can't really tell you how the night began. But what I do know is that there was plenty of alcohol consumed by multiple parties involved that night. I was a junior at Tennessee State University. On this particular night, a couple of my best friends and myself were rolling around in my Chevy Tahoe. We were bored out of our minds and just scoping the scene when we rolled up on a situation. Some of the homies from TSU were exchanging words with a group of frat boys from Fisk, a neighboring university just up historic Jefferson Street from TSU. This conflict was occurring in the parking lot right across from the airplane. This is where some sense of self-awareness would have come in handy, but at age 20, I didn't know myself like I know myself at age 36. You see, at some point growing up, I became loyal to a fault. I was always one of the smart kids and also had great instincts for survival. I think that was a requirement for anyone raised out north. You would think that having three strong qualities like loyalty, intelligence, and resiliency are a great combination for anyone to possess. However, if you're a young black male and you use those qualities to manipulate the world around you, which I did, people called you a thug. Funny thing is, if you have those same qualities and you're an older white male and you use those qualities to manipulate the world around you, some people call you CEO or even Mr. President in some cases, but I digress. No matter what school I attended growing up, due to my manipulative ways, I was always able to identify the tough guy, usually the school bully. I would offer to let him copy my work in exchange for protection and friendship. I told you I was a smart guy, right? Well, sometimes when we were taking a test, I would just breeze through it as quickly as possible, randomly selecting answers on purpose. Then I would let the tough guy copy my answers. But before turning my test in, I would go back, erase my answers, and then really take the test before submitting it to the teacher. I knew that if the teacher saw that me and the tough guy had the same answers, we would both get accused of cheating. But doing it this way, we always turned in different answers, so it was all good. The tough guy got to copy my answers, my grades were safe, and my protection was in place, because the tough guy was never smart enough to figure out that I was changing my answers. One time, the tough guy and myself even had a conversation about why our grades were different after the teacher returned our test scores. I was slick enough to convince him that maybe the teacher just gave two different tests to trick the class, and he bought it. See, in my mind, I was more Malcolm X than Martin Luther King Jr. I was all about getting my way by any means necessary. As I got older and it was time for me to go to high school, my parents sent me to a magnet school for smart kids, ironically enough named Martin Luther King School. As my self-awareness grew, I began to realize that I had been hanging out with the tough guys so much that I had picked up on some of their habits. I was still smart and manipulative, but in high school developed just enough feistiness to be a tough guy if I had to. This became evident on a certain afternoon. My younger brother Farah was outside playing basketball in our neighbor's backyard after school. And normally, I would have been outside doing the same, but this afternoon, I had my head buried in homework. All of a sudden, my brother came into the house crying. When I asked him what happened, he replied, Tony, an older kid about the same age as me, had picked on him and shoved him. Without hesitation and full of anger, I put down my pencil, I hopped the neighbor's fence, I proceeded to the basketball court, and I whooped Tony's butt. If it were not for my neighbor's mother coming out and breaking up the fight, I would hate to think about what eventually could have happened. I probably should have tried to resolve the conflict differently, but then it was easy for my anger to turn into aggression and become physical. When I say that I picked up some of my tough guy habits, I clearly had gone from needing protection to being a protector myself. Now let's fast forward back to that night at TSU, where I found myself back in a position of wanting to protect my friends. My best friend, EK, was driving my truck because I had one too many drinks for the night and EK didn't drink, so it made him the perfect designated driver. From the passenger seat, I instructed him to pull right in between my friends and the guys from Fisk. My Tahoe drove a wedge perfectly between my homies and the Fisk guys. With my friends on the driver's side of my truck and the Fisk guys on my passenger side, I opened the passenger's door and stood on the doorstep. The doorstep was at least 2 feet off the ground. I'm already 5'10", so standing there made me nearly 8 feet, looking down at a crowd of guys from Fisk. There was a tall, skinny, dark guy that stood about 6'8", 6'9", that stood out amongst the crowd I was facing. I had seen him and a couple of the others in the crowd at parties before. They knew that me and my friends wanted to pledge their frat, but the TSU chapter was suspended, so we weren't able to pledge. I figured they ran into my friends and felt they could bully them because of our intentions. Only problem was they picked the wrong group of dudes that night to try. I immediately addressed the crowd. Welcome to my campus. Now, I don't know how this exchange started, but there's nothing going down on my campus unless I say so. Immediately, the tall, dark guy took a swing at me, and I barely saw it coming, but at the last second was able to dodge the fist enough to barely get grazed on the cheek. In reaction, I jumped on top of him from the doorstep and locked his head up with a grip like a tick on skin. While I was on him, I felt the rest of the Fisk guys jump on top of me. But even when I was clearly on the losing end of the fight, I felt like I was winning. Because I had that tall, dark guy, and the more they hit me, the harder I hit him. To the point where I didn't even feel the blows that I was taking from the other guys on top of me. When my friends finally made their way around my truck to where I was being jumped, the tables quickly turned, and the altercation became a full-out brawl. After emerging from the pile, I was walking from scuffle to scuffle during the brawl, taking swings at any of the Fisk guys that were within reach. Some of the Fisk guys started to retreat to their cars. It was like a war battle scene from a movie, a good old fist-to-cuff fight for respect. That is, until I turned around from one of the scuffles, and I was staring down the barrel of a gun. One of the Fisk guys retreated to his car to grab his pistol, and I just happened to be the first TSU guy that he ran into. The tough guy part of me wanted to say in my best tough guy voice, "So what you gonna do with that?" I knew I couldn't run, retreat, but instead, I just stood there glaring directly into the eyes of the person on the other side of the gun. And that's when I heard, pow, pow, pow.